When my parents tried to convince my stepmother I was plotting against her, they unleashed a new alliance that could destroy us all. And I'm Ryan, and my family has officially lost its mind. I don't even know how to start this, but here's the deal. I've been living in a pressure cooker of family drama, and it finally blew up in the most spectacular way possible. Let me explain. First, some backstory. My parents, Matthew and Rachel, divorced when I was 14. My dad remarried a few years later to Amanda, who's honestly been fine. She's 40, polished, and always seemed like she was just trying to coexist with us without stepping on any toes. We weren't close, but there was no major drama, at least until now. Apparently, my parents have decided that I'm some kind of villain, and Amanda is their new favorite weapon. Last week, I overheard something that flipped my world upside down. I came home late from work and was heading to the kitchen for a snack when I heard voices coming from the den. My dad and mom were talking, which was already weird because they can't usually stand to be in the same room. I was about to announce myself, but something about their tone stopped me. I know eavesdropping is wrong, but trust me, this conversation was not one I was meant to hear. I'm telling you, Matthew, my mom hissed. If Amanda thinks Ryan's out to get her, she'll handle him for us. She's smart enough to see he's trouble. Trouble? What the hell? I don't know, Rachel, my dad said, sounding uneasy. Amanda's not stupid. She might start asking questions we don't want her to. That's why you have to plant the idea subtly. My mom shot back. Make her think Ryan's been lying to her or hiding something. If she feels threatened, she'll push him out herself. My chest tightened. My own parents were plotting against me? Why? I hadn't done anything to Amanda, or them, for that matter. I ducked back into the hallway before they could catch me, but my mind was racing. What were they trying to accomplish? The next day, I couldn't stop replaying their conversation in my head. I wanted to confront Amanda, but how do you even bring something like that up? Hey, Amanda, just so you know, my parents are trying to turn you against me. Cool, right? Instead, I decided to test the waters. At dinner that night, I paid extra attention to Amanda. She seemed normal, calm, polite, and as detached as ever. But when I asked her if everything was okay, her eyes flickered, just for a second. That was enough to confirm my suspicion. They'd already started their little campaign. Things escalated faster than I expected. A few days later, Amanda cornered me in the kitchen. Ryan, she said, her voice careful. Can I ask you something? Of course, I replied, trying to sound casual while bracing for impact. Is there something you're not telling me? She asked. Her gaze was sharp, like she was studying every twitch in my expression. What do you mean? I asked, playing dumb. It's just, your dad mentioned something the other day. He said you've been acting secretive lately, and I've noticed it too. Is there something going on between us that I should know about? Boom. There it was. The seed they planted had already started to sprout. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, but I forced myself to stay calm. Look, Amanda, I said, meeting her gaze, I don't know what my dad told you, but whatever it is, it's not true. If you have questions, just ask me directly. I have nothing to hide. She blinked, clearly not expecting me to be so blunt. Okay, she said after a pause. I'll keep that in mind. That conversation left me on edge. Amanda wasn't fully convinced, and I couldn't blame her. She didn't know me well enough to immediately dismiss my parents' lies. But now I had a bigger problem. Why were my parents doing this? What did they stand to gain by turning Amanda against me? The answer came from an unlikely source, my sister Chloe. She's 18 and always in her own little world, but she has this uncanny ability to overhear things she shouldn't. You seem stressed, she said casually one afternoon, flopping onto the couch next to me. Understatement of the year, I muttered. She raised an eyebrow. What's going on? I debated whether to tell her, but Chloe's one of the few people I trust. I explained what I'd overheard and Amanda's sudden suspicion toward me. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she was quiet. Okay, don't freak out, she said finally, but I think I know why they're doing this. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Dad and Mom have been fighting over this thing for years, she said vaguely. I don't know all the details, but it's about money. A lot of money. I think it's tied to Amanda somehow. Maybe they're trying to make sure she stays on their side. I stared at her, my mind spinning. Money? What money? My parents had always been secretive about finances, but this was something else entirely. And if Chloe was right, Amanda wasn't just a pawn in their game. She might be the prize. Now I'm stuck in the middle of a storm I didn't create. My parents are playing chess with Amanda and me, but they don't realize we're not just pawns. I'm not sure what's coming next, but I have a feeling this is only the beginning. Stay tuned. Things are about to get messy. If part one of this mess was an appetizer, then this next phase is the main course, and trust me, it's bitter. After Chloe's revelation about the money, my paranoia went into overdrive. I couldn't stop wondering what kind of fortune my parents were hiding, and more importantly, why Amanda was at the center of it. But I didn't have time to dwell. The next morning, Amanda approached me again. Only this time, she wasn't trying to sound cautious. She was downright icy. "Ryan, I think we need to have a serious talk," she said, crossing her arms in the doorway to my room. I blinked. Sure. What's up?" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Your father told me something very concerning. He said you've been spreading rumors about me." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "What?" I sputtered. "Amanda, I haven't said a word about you to anyone." Her eyes narrowed. "Really?" "Because he seemed very convincing when he said you've been telling Chloe that I'm the reason for the family tension." I had to resist the urge to scream. My dad was pulling out all the stops, feeding Amanda the kind of lies that could make anyone doubt themselves. But here's the thing. She was watching me too carefully, like she wanted to believe me but didn't know if she could. This was my chance. "Amanda, I need you to listen to me," I said firmly. "My dad is lying to you. So is my mom. I overheard them talking about how they want to turn you against me. I don't know why, but I think it has something to do with money." Her expression flickered, but she didn't respond immediately. So, I doubled down. "You've known me for years. Have I ever given you a reason not to trust me? Have I ever tried to undermine you?" Her arms fell to her sides, and she sighed. "No, you haven't." "Exactly. So why would I start now?" I leaned forward, trying to convey how serious I was. "Amanda, they're using you. They're setting you up as a weapon in whatever game they're playing." For a moment, she just stood there, staring at me. Then she sat on the edge of my bed, looking more tired than I'd ever seen her. "I've been feeling like something's off," she admitted. "Your dad's been acting different lately, like he's trying too hard to convince me of things." But I didn't know what to believe. Now we were getting somewhere. "Amanda, I'm not your enemy," I said. "If anything, I think we need to figure out what's really going on here. Together." She looked at me, her lips pressing into a thin line. "All right, Ryan, let's do this. But if you're lying to me—" "I'm not," I said quickly. "You'll see." The next few days were a whirlwind. Amanda and I started comparing notes, and it didn't take long to see just how deep the manipulation went. My dad had been feeding her a steady stream of half-truths and outright lies for weeks. He told her I'd been skipping work, hiding things from Chloe, and even making snide comments about her behind her back. None of it was true, but it explained why she'd started acting so cold toward me. Amanda, in turn, shared something that sent a chill down my spine. My dad had asked her to sign a legal document a few weeks ago, something about protecting family assets. She hadn't signed it yet because the language felt off, but now she was starting to suspect it was part of a bigger plan. "Do you think he's trying to cut me out of something?" she asked one night as we pored over the document in her office. "Maybe," I said, scanning the legal jargon. "Or he's trying to make sure you don't have access to whatever this money is." She frowned. "What money? I don't even know what you're talking about." That made two of us. Chloe's vague hints about a fortune were the only clue we had, but Amanda's lack of knowledge complicated things. If the money wasn't hers, then whose was it? Meanwhile, Chloe was being frustratingly cryptic. When I tried to press her for more details about what she'd overheard, she clammed up. "I told you what I know," she said, flipping through her phone like she couldn't care less. "If you want answers, maybe you should start asking Dad." "Chloe, this is serious," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "If there's money involved, and it's tied to Amanda, We need to know why. She glanced up at me, her expression unreadable. All I know is that Dad and Mom have been fighting about it for years. And whatever it is, they think Amanda has some kind of claim to it. I groaned, running a hand through my hair. Do you even realize how insane this is? Welcome to our family, she said dryly before wandering off. Things came to a head a few nights later. Amanda and I had been piecing together as much as we could, but we needed more information. That's when Amanda had an idea. Your dad keeps a safe in his study, she said. I've seen him put documents in there before. Maybe there's something in there that explains all of this. Breaking into my dad's safe sounded like a terrible idea, but at this point, I was desperate. So, we waited until he went out for his weekly poker game and crept into his study. Amanda knew the combination. She'd seen him enter it once by accident, and within seconds, the safe was open. Inside, we found a stack of papers, most of them boring financial records. But one document stood out, a handwritten letter from my grandfather, dated 2 years before he died. I scanned the letter quickly, and my jaw dropped. It detailed a massive inheritance, millions of dollars, that my grandfather had set aside for his descendants. The catch? It could only be accessed by the person who fulfilled certain conditions, which included being married into the family for a minimum of 5 years. I turned to Amanda, who was reading over my shoulder. This is about you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked stunned. I didn't know about this. But they did, I said, my mind racing. They've been trying to manipulate you because they think you'll unlock the inheritance. Before she could respond, we heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My dad was home early. We scrambled to put everything back, shoving the papers into the safe and locking it just as the front door opened. Amanda slipped out of the study, and I followed, my heart pounding like a drum. We dodged a bullet, but we were no closer to figuring out what to do next. Amanda and I agreed to keep the letter a secret, at least for now. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized just how dangerous this situation had become. My parents weren't just trying to manipulate Amanda. They were willing to destroy anyone who stood in their way, including me. And if we didn't act fast, I had a feeling they'd do exactly that. Amanda and I were treading on dangerous ground. The letter from my grandfather explained so much, yet it also left us with more questions. Why had no one ever mentioned this inheritance? And what were the conditions beyond Amanda's 5-year marriage to my father? The stakes were higher than ever, but we couldn't make any rash moves without more answers. The next day, I decided to bring Chloe into the fold. As much as she frustrated me with her cryptic behavior, she clearly knew more than she let on, and we needed her to start talking. You've been holding back, I said, cornering her in the living room. What else do you know about this inheritance? She looked up from her laptop, her face blank. I already told you. Don't. I cut her off. Don't play dumb, Chloe. Amanda and I found a letter from Grandpa in Dad's safe. We know there's money involved, and we know Dad and Mom are trying to manipulate Amanda to get it. What aren't you telling me? Her eyes widened at the mention of the letter, and for the first time, she looked genuinely nervous. You found that? Yes. Now spill. She hesitated, biting her lip, before finally sighing. Okay, fine. I didn't tell you everything because I didn't think it mattered, but I overheard Dad and Mom talking about the conditions a while back. It's not just about Amanda being married to Dad. The inheritance also requires that Amanda sign off on it. They can't access the money without her consent. I stared at her, stunned. What? Why would Grandpa set it up like that? I don't know, she admitted. But Dad and Mom are freaking out because Amanda has no idea she holds all the power. They're trying to keep her in the dark while pushing her to do what they want. This was even worse than I'd thought. Not only were my parents manipulating Amanda, they were actively hiding her pivotal role in the inheritance. If she signed off on something without knowing what it meant, they'd get everything while she got nothing. Amanda took the news surprisingly well, considering how high the stakes were. So, they think I'm just a tool, she said bitterly after I explained what Chloe had told me. That's why they've been trying so hard to make me doubt you. Exactly, I said. If you trust me, you might figure out the truth. If you think I'm your enemy, they can keep you isolated and in the dark. She nodded. her jaw tight. Not anymore. We're blowing this wide open. Easier said than done. My dad and mom were like hawks, watching for any sign of rebellion. Amanda and I had to be careful, but we also couldn't afford to wait too long. The longer we stayed quiet, the more time they had to tighten their grip. Things came to a head one night at dinner. My dad had cooked steaks, a rare occurrence that immediately put me on edge. He was never this nice unless he wanted something. So, Amanda, he said casually as we ate, I was thinking we should finalize that document I showed you. It's just a formality, really. A way to make sure everything is in order for the family. I shot Amanda a warning glance, but she was already ahead of me. I've been meaning to talk to you about that, she said, her tone even. It's a pretty complicated document. I'd like to have a lawyer look at it before I sign anything. My dad's smile faltered. A lawyer? Amanda, that's not necessary. It's just a family matter. Exactly, she said, her voice hardening. And I want to make sure I understand every detail before I make any decisions. My mom, who had been quietly observing the exchange, jumped in. Amanda, don't you trust Matthew? He's your husband. He would never ask you to do anything that wasn't in your best interest. Amanda's eyes flashed, and for a moment, I thought she was going to lose her composure. But she held her ground. This isn't about trust. It's about being informed. If it's really just a formality, then you shouldn't have any problem with me consulting a professional. The tension at the table was palpable. My dad's face darkened, and my mom looked like she was about to explode. But before either of them could respond, Chloe chimed in. Wow, this is awkward, she said, smirking. I didn't realize we were having a family business meeting over dinner. My dad shot her a glare, but her comment effectively broke the stalemate. The conversation shifted to safer topics, but the damage was done. Amanda had drawn a line in the sand, and my parents knew it. After dinner, Amanda and I retreated to her office to regroup. They're panicking, she said, pacing back and forth. Matthew almost never loses his cool, but tonight? He was barely holding it together. Good, I said. Maybe we can use that to our advantage. How? She asked, stopping to look at me. I hesitated, then took a deep breath. We need to talk to someone who knows more about this inheritance. Someone who can fill in the gaps. Like who? I thought for a moment, then snapped my fingers. David. David was the family lawyer, a man who'd been involved with my grandfather's estate for years. If anyone had answers, it was him. But convincing him to talk wouldn't be easy. He was loyal to my dad, and I doubted he'd be eager to betray that trust. Still, it was worth a shot. The next day, Amanda and I arranged a meeting with David under the pretense of reviewing the document my dad wanted her to sign. It was a gamble, but to my surprise, David agreed to meet us. I don't usually get involved in family squabbles, he said as we sat down in his office. But I'll take a look at the document if it'll put your mind at ease. Amanda handed it over, and we watched as he skimmed the pages. His expression grew more serious with each passing moment. This is unusual, he said finally, setting the document down. It's not just a formality, Amanda. This gives Matthew and Rachel complete control over the inheritance, effectively cutting you out of the picture. Amanda's face hardened. I knew it. David hesitated, then added, There's something else you should know. The conditions of the inheritance don't just involve your consent. They also require that you remain married to Matthew for at least another year. My stomach dropped. That explained why my dad was so desperate to keep Amanda on his side. If she left him, the entire plan would fall apart. Amanda looked at me, her eyes filled with determination. We have to stop them. I nodded. But we need to be smart about it. If they realize we're onto them, they'll double down. David leaned back in his chair, looking troubled. This is a delicate situation. If you're going to challenge them, you need concrete evidence. Something that proves they're acting in bad faith. Amanda and I exchanged a glance. We didn't have that evidence yet, but we were determined to find it. And when we did, my parents would have nowhere to hide. Amanda and I had our mission. Gather enough evidence to expose my parents' manipulation and ensure Amanda wasn't coerced into signing away her rights. But the closer we got to the truth, the more dangerous the game became. My parents weren't just schemers. They were master manipulators, and they weren't going to give up their plans without a fight. A few days after our meeting with David, Amanda decided to take the bold step of confronting my father directly. She didn't tell me beforehand, probably to keep me out of the crossfire, but I found out later how it went down. It started innocently enough. She cornered him in his study, holding the document he'd been pressuring her to sign. "Matthew," she began, her voice calm but firm, "I've had this document reviewed by a lawyer, and I want to know why you didn't tell me it would give you full control over the inheritance." My dad didn't even flinch. "Amanda, it's not what you think. The document is just a precaution, something to ensure the money stays in the family." "Then why does it cut me out entirely?" she countered. "Why do you need me to sign away my rights?" He sighed, rubbing his temples like he was the victim here. "Amanda, you have to understand, this inheritance is complicated. There are stipulations, taxes, legal loopholes. It's not as simple as it seems. I'm just trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Amanda snapped. "By lying to me? By treating me like I'm too stupid to understand?" At this point, my dad's patience started to crack. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said, his voice sharp. "I'm doing what's best for all of us. If you can't see that, then maybe you need to think about where your loyalties lie." And there it was, the veiled threat. Amanda told me later that it sent a chill down her spine, but she didn't back down. Instead, she walked out of the room and went straight to me. "They're more desperate than I thought," she said, pacing back and forth in my room. "Matthew's starting to slip. He's not used to being challenged." "That's good," I said. "It means we're getting to him." But Amanda shook her head. "It also means he's dangerous. Desperate people do reckless things." Meanwhile, Chloe was doing her best to stay neutral, but I could tell she was starting to feel the strain of being caught in the middle. One night, she came into my room, looking more serious than I'd ever seen her. "Ryan, you need to be careful," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "Mom and Dad are. They're not going to let this go. I overheard them talking again, and they're planning something." "Planning what?" I asked, my stomach tightening. She hesitated, then said, "I'm not sure, but it sounded like they're trying to dig up dirt on you and Amanda. They mentioned hiring a private investigator." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. A private investigator? My parents were willing to go that far to protect their scheme? The next day, Amanda and I decided to take a more proactive approach. We needed to find evidence of their wrongdoing, something concrete that we could use to blow the whole thing open. So, we started digging. Amanda went through years of old financial records, looking for anything suspicious, while I focused on their digital footprints. It wasn't long before we struck gold. Amanda found a series of wire transfers from my dad's account to a mysterious offshore bank account. The amounts were staggering, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all sent over the past 5 years. At first, we thought it might be connected to the inheritance, but then we noticed something strange. The dates of the transfers lined up almost perfectly with major arguments between my parents. "They were paying someone," Amanda said, her voice shaking. "But who? And why?" As if things weren't chaotic enough, Tyler, my best friend, got dragged into the drama. He showed up unannounced one evening, looking panicked. "Dude, you need to see this," he said, holding out his phone. It was a screenshot of an email my dad had sent to someone named Paul Winston. The email was short but damning. "Paul, I need that report on Ryan ASAP. Dig up everything you can. Work, school, social life, whatever. I want it by the end of the week." "What the hell?" I muttered, my hands shaking as I read the email. "How did you get this?" "I have a friend who works in IT, Tyler said. "Your dad must have been careless with his accounts, because this popped up on a flagged server." Amanda, who had been listening from the doorway, looked furious. "He's trying to destroy you," she said. "He wants to discredit you so no one believes you if you speak out." This was the final straw. My dad wasn't just playing games. He was trying to ruin my life to protect his lies. We decided to confront them that night. It was a risky move, but we couldn't wait any longer. Amanda and I gathered the evidence we'd found, the offshore transfers, the email, and the document, and prepared for what we knew would be an explosive showdown. When we walked into the living room, my parents were already there, sitting together on the couch like some united front. Chloe lingered in the background, her arms crossed. "We need to talk," Amanda said, her voice steady but cold. My dad raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "This," she said, tossing the document onto the coffee table. "And this," she added, holding up copies of the wire transfers. "And this," I finished, showing them the email Tyler had uncovered. For the first time, I saw genuine panic flash across my dad's face. My mom, however, stayed calm. "I don't know where you got those," she said smoothly, "but you're misinterpreting everything. This isn't what you think." "Cut the crap, Mom," I snapped. "We know about the inheritance. We know about the conditions. And we know you've been lying to Amanda to manipulate her." My dad stood up, his face darkening. "Ryan, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're meddling in things that don't concern you." "Don't concern me?" I shot back. "You're trying to ruin my life and steal from Amanda, and you think it doesn't concern me?" The room erupted into chaos. My parents yelled. Amanda yelled back. Chloe tried to intervene, but it was like trying to stop a hurricane with an umbrella. Finally, Amanda dropped the bombshell. "If you think I'm signing that document, you're insane," she said. "And if you keep pushing me, I'll make sure the truth about all of this comes out. To everyone." The threat hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. My parents didn't respond immediately, but I could see the fear in their eyes. They knew they'd lost control of the situation, and they had no idea what to do next. As Amanda and I left the room, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. We'd won this battle, but the war was far from over. The confrontation left us all shaken. Amanda and I had forced my parents into a corner, but I knew this wasn't the end. They were too cunning to let everything unravel without one last, desperate move. I just didn't know what it would be, or how much damage they'd cause trying to save themselves. The morning after our explosive showdown, Chloe knocked on my door. She looked pale, like she hadn't slept. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. "What now?" I asked, half expecting another revelation about offshore accounts or secret documents. I think I made a mistake," she said, wringing her hands. "I didn't tell you everything." I stared at her, my patience wearing thin. "Spit it out, Chloe. What are you hiding?" She took a deep breath. "It's about Grandpa's inheritance. There's more to the story. Mom and Dad aren't just after the money. They're trying to cover up what they did to get it." "What do you mean?" I asked, my stomach sinking. She hesitated, then said, "I overheard Mom talking about it years ago. Grandpa didn't just set aside the money. He changed his will before he died, cutting Dad out entirely. The only reason Dad even has access to the inheritance now is because he forged documents to make it look like Grandpa approved the trust." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Forgery? This wasn't just about greed anymore. It was criminal. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice rising. "They forged Grandpa's will?" Chloe nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "That's why they're so desperate to control Amanda. If she finds out the truth, she could expose everything." Amanda was furious when I told her. "So they've been lying about everything," she said, pacing the room. "Not just the inheritance, but how they even got it in the first place." "Exactly," I said. "And now that they know we're onto them, they'll stop at nothing to protect themselves." Amanda didn't respond immediately. Instead, she sat down, staring at the floor. "If this gets out, it'll destroy them." "That's the point," I said, though the words felt hollow. For all their faults, they were still my parents. The idea of ruining them, of exposing their crimes, wasn't as satisfying as I thought it would be. Amanda, however, seemed more resolved. "They deserve it," she said firmly. "They've manipulated everyone around them for years. It's time they faced the consequences." The final straw came that evening. I was in my room, scrolling through my phone, when Chloe barged in, looking frantic. "Ryan, they're leaving," she said. "What?" "Mom and Dad. I saw them packing suitcases. They're trying to skip town." Panic shot through me. If they ran, we'd lose any chance of holding them accountable. Amanda and I had gathered enough evidence to blow the lid off their schemes. But if my parents disappeared before we could act, they'd get away with everything. "We have to stop them," I said, grabbing my keys. "Where are they?" In the garage, Chloe said. They're loading up the car. I ran downstairs, Amanda close behind me. Sure enough, my parents were in the garage, tossing bags into the trunk of my dad's SUV. When they saw us, my mom froze, her hand still on a suitcase. Going somewhere? Amanda asked, her voice dripping with venom. My dad straightened, his expression cold. This doesn't concern you. The hell it doesn't, I said, stepping forward. You're running because you know you're caught. You forged Grandpa's will, you tried to manipulate Amanda, and now you're running away like cowards. My mom's face twisted into a sneer. You don't know what you're talking about, Ryan. This is bigger than you. Then explain it, Amanda snapped. Tell us why you've been lying to everyone for years. For a moment, I thought they might try to defend themselves, but instead, my dad just shook his head. You're making a mistake, he said. You think you're exposing the truth, but all you're doing is tearing this family apart. This family was already torn apart. I shot back. You did that, not us. The next few hours were a blur. Amanda called David, the family lawyer, and explained everything. He promised to take immediate legal action, but he also warned us that my parents would fight back. Sure enough, they lawyered up within hours, refusing to cooperate with any investigations. What followed was a whirlwind of legal battles, media attention, and family drama that made our previous conflicts look like a picnic. My parents denied everything, claiming they were the victims of a smear campaign orchestrated by Amanda and me. But the evidence we'd gathered, the forged documents, the offshore accounts, the email from the private investigator, was impossible to ignore. The final nail in their coffin came when Chloe testified against them. Her account of overhearing my mom and dad discussing the forgery was the tipping point, and it wasn't long before the courts ruled in Amanda's favor. The inheritance would be divided as my grandfather had originally intended, with Amanda receiving her fair share. In the aftermath, my family was left in ruins. My parents were facing charges for fraud and forgery, and their reputation in our community was destroyed. Amanda, while relieved to have cleared her name, struggled with the emotional toll of the ordeal. As for Chloe, she distanced herself from everyone, needing time to process everything. And me? I'm still trying to make sense of it all. My parents weren't perfect, but I never thought they were capable of something like this. The betrayal cut deep, and I'm not sure if I'll ever fully recover. But if there's one thing I've learned from this nightmare, it's that family isn't just about blood. It's about trust, loyalty, and respect. My parents forgot that somewhere along the way, but Amanda and I didn't. And in the end, that made all the difference. As I write this, I'm staring at the letter my grandfather wrote, the one that started it all. It's a reminder of what we lost, but also of what we gained, the truth. And maybe, just maybe, a chance to rebuild something better. If you take anything away from this, let it be this. Never underestimate the power of a family united against its own demons.